Hello everyone, my name is Boulevard. Welcome to Tournament Tactician, the premier tournament tier list for Legends of Runeterra. As many of you are aware, I will be casting the World Championship Qualifier this weekend alongside Skarzig, so look forward to that on the main Legends of Runeterra Twitch channel. Now, as for the actual tier list, the meta seems really straightforward, and I said that last Runeterra Open for the Heart of the Huntress Open, and was proven a little wrong because I'm running into issues where this comes out Wednesday and then developments happen Thursday and Friday, and last time around, Thursday and Friday, people really started to split up their Siren Song decks, and they would do the Lucian Champion String Siren Song alongside like Fizz Siren Song, and prior to that, there were only a couple of people doing that. It definitely wasn't a popular strategy, and then come open time, it took over. So, this time around, at least, there is no deck that is so powerful that people are trying to split it up in the lineup. That's just straight up not happening. We're good on that end. As far as what we've been seeing out of tournament results, it's been very consistent. So, Aatrox Vayne, Samira Fizz, and Bandle Jinx obviously did very, very well at the MR Open last weekend. Heimer Jace was very absent, but Heimer Jace has not only been picking up popularity on ladder, going from like the number 4 to the number 2 spot today, but also has been doing pretty well in some of these smaller events that we don't necessarily look at. And of course, as we've gone over in last Tournament Tactician, the MR Open is very bad at telling the story of what the next major event is actually going to look like. So our tier 1 is filled out by these decks. They're performing a cut above everything else, and if we want to take things at face value from the MR Open, Samira Fizz, Bandle Jinx, X decks are looking like the standard for the XYZ. Of course, this could have changed over the course of the week as some of these other decks rise and fall in popularity. Maybe aggro is no longer the way, but that is how things were a couple of days ago. I don't necessarily know that that is going to persist in the Open. I think that we're in a pretty standard triangle meta with control, mid-range, aggro, but each of those archetypes really only has 2 decks that are top performers within them, and so I think what people really need to look for at this WCQ is to not get pigeonholed into running a triple something lineup. I think you can go 2 and 1 in a lot of areas, and you're going to find a lot more success there. For example, at the MR Open, Samira Fizz, Bandle Jinx, X lineups took up half the top cut, 2 of those players rounding it out with the Aatrox Vayne Quinn, and now, of course, Heimer Jace enters the fray. So if you're wondering, I said, oh yeah, there's like 2 decks in every area, what are those 2 decks? So like, obviously, Samira Fizz, Bandle Jinx are the best aggro decks, Aatrox Vayne Quinn is the best mid-range deck, and then kind of followed up by Alawi Swain, and we'll touch on where Nasus falls into this in a second. And then for control, it's Heimer Jace and Jhin Nar. Jhin Nar Nora, because you can go Jhin Nora, you can go a split of them, you can go Jhin Nar, it's really up to you. Nasus does this weird thing where it feels like a number of games you play as Nasus are going to be mid-range games, but if you draw Vaults of Helia, you are now a control deck. You are really hoping to just draw removal spells turn after turn and spend your mana on that, while Vaults of Helia sort of ramps you into the late game and is how you buff up your Nasus and take over the board. So Nasus is a little bit weird, and honestly, Nasus is, so the asterisks here that you can kind of see on the side, I highlighted them in orange just because they were kind of hard to see, are decks that I feel like could move down a tier or up a tier. Jaxorn and Echo Jinx, I think, could potentially be tier 2 options. Nasus, I think, might potentially be a tier 3 option. I don't think it's a tier 1 option. Nasus and Alawi Swain. And Alawi Swain is another deck, I think, where you have mid-range hands and you have control hands, and thus I am really not a big fan of Nasus or Alawi Swain, but I'm trying to keep the tier list a little more objective so that you know what to expect. And I think that these decks are both popular enough and performing well enough that people are going to play them like a tier 2 deck. I do think this is going to be our top 4. The order I'm a little iffy on because I would think Bandle Jinx would be number 1, but I think that there are other viable Jinx decks. And so it might get split up a little bit, but so far in the past, every time I've been like, yeah, like this might be number 1 or 2, and then, there's these other lists that are popping up. Nobody has given a shit about the other list, and they've just played that one. So Bandle Jinx might end up being number 1. Play rate wise, going into top 64, my opinion. Definitely these 4, and then if I had to pick a number 5, number 5 is probably going to have less than 10. That's just kind of where I'm feeling. But again, it's a rather large tier 1, and so it's also going to be a rather large tier 3, because these are the decks that, like, nothing's broken, right? We're nowhere near a tier 0 format. Every strategy is viable, and it's really just going to come down to comfort or how you feel the general public is going to swing and then trying to counter that, but you really don't want to get too deep into the counter this time around. You really don't want to overthink it. You just want to play a solid game plan, and everything feels solid. And so, yeah, it feels like we've kind of got a straight shooting WCQ for the first time. Shen Jarvan and Bandle Gunners are maybe some unsung heroes. Shen Jarvan hasn't been putting up big numbers, but it's been putting up a good number of wins, and it has been consistently finding its way into the top 8. Just something to look at if you're going for, you really want to lean into the mid-range style, or if you're looking for a second, more traditional mid-range deck to go alongside the Aatrox Vayne Quinn. You can go Shen Jarvan. You could even go triple Demacia with the Bandle Gunners Champion Strength, because Bandle Gunners, again, is also another deck that's kind of been creeping in there. I know Roji topped the MR Open with the Bilgewater variant, but Roji always a little bit of an outlier, people going back more towards the Champion Strength variant, because Champion Strength is a card that did not get touched after dominating the last Runeterra Open. As far as tier 3 goes, I don't want you to think too hard about these. These are just things that are kind of filling out other tournaments. Zombie Ash is probably a little fringe, but again, outlier. Grandpa Roji did win one of the MR Daily Opens with it, so I wanted to shout it out here. Sump Monument seems like bait. It feels like people just really aren't on this one. Teemo Elusives looked really strong at the start of the season and has really fallen off. Echo Jinx is an interesting one, and I definitely want to highlight this deck as a viable option for people, especially if you're looking for some mid-range options, because Echo Jinx has always kind of been, one of the anti-mid-range decks. You all sit there and you stat check each other, and then I just play a Chrono Break, and now I'm suddenly much more ahead on board. I go into combat with my quick attack champions. Life is good. And on top of that, Echo Jinx has always done usually pretty well into control. While your units are easily removed, the go wide rally strategy does pay off. Now, I'm not sure how Echo Jinx pairs into like Jhin Nora, something where the broad main comes down and your units are a little easier to remove. Heimer Jace is probably still playing some number of Aftershock to kill even a level 2 Echo, but this is definitely something that I wanted to highlight as a potential underrepresented deck going into the weekend, and it's something that's been performing well at the daily tournaments. The more I scrolled through Santupi's Twitter, shout out Santupi for always having those daily tournament stats, Echo Jinx is a deck that's been popping up in a lot of victories lineups, and so it's something that I just wanted to highlight. Jax Ornn really fell off a cliff in favor of the better fish fight deck, Aatrox Vayne, but it's making a little bit of a comeback, just something I want you to be aware of. Again, not the biggest Jax Ornn fan in the world, but they did catch a buff this last patch with the Saurion, so again, something I want you to be aware of. The only other thing I can really think of is, you still have options to run multiple champion strength decks in one lineup if you want to go Scouts, Bandle Gunners, but I do prefer Bandle Gunners over Scouts because it is not as champion reliant. Champion being actual champion, not champion strength. And obviously, I like Bandle City Mare. I like what it offers you, but Scouts is probably near the same level. It's not too far behind what Bandle Gunners is offering, but the Bandle City stuff a little bit more consistent in terms of having a resilient board. If your board gets wiped, you still generated a lot of cards. But outside of that, I don't want to talk your ear off about it. I think that we're looking at a very healthy meta. I think that we're going to see pretty low representations through top 64. Not going to get any crazy numbers. I'd be surprised if anything even broke half. Now, as far as the what's Boulevard, you keep talking about all these Runeterra Opens over the course of the year. There's always some midweek development. What is it this time? Today, Wednesday, Aikedo went and tweeted about a Seraphine deck that he's been playing, and now Majin Bey is playing that on stream. Both of these players are historical Seraphine enjoyers. They really like the archetype. They've played a lot of it. It makes sense that they'd have high win rates on it, even in Masters. How far this extends to the general public is a little bit of a question, given that the deck is relatively untested, at least today on Wednesday when Aikedo first unveiled it to the world. But with Majin and Aikedo both pushing it, those are some of the bigger competitive content creators in Legends of Runeterra. It's probably going to either catch on or at least be something that people are aware of. Where does it fit into this? It probably fits into the control section. It might end up just being a ban thing. Control is very bad at dealing with Seraphine, right? And I haven't honestly dug too much into the deck because I don't even know if it's going to persist into the weekend or if Majin and Aikedo are going to come back a day later and be like, okay, yeah, actually, this kind of sucks. You should just be playing generic Karma set, or you shouldn't even play in the lineup or what have you. But yeah, if I were playing this weekend, I would be playing Aatrox Vayne, Heimerdinger Jace, and Jhin Nora. Those are the decks that I've been playing the most of. They're the ones that I enjoy, and so that is what I think you should be doing. Now, I know this is probably the shortest tier 1 event WCQ tournament tactician that I've ever done, but again, it's a very straightforward meta, and I don't think there's it's really just comfort. Everything is performing well. So I will see you all on Sunday at the WCQ, where again I will be casting with Skarzig on the official Legends of Runeterra Twitch channel. Thank you so much for watching. I've been Boulevard, and as always, good luck in your tournaments.